Hey, what's going on, guys? Lightsaber Samurai here. I'm back again for another video, and this time we are back to dive into more hidden gems for the PlayStation 4. I remember years ago on Metal Jesus Rocks, Radical Reggie described the PlayStation 4 as the second coming of the PS2, and man, was he right. Thousands of titles that we have on the console now that we are several years in and toward the end of its life. And because we're at the end of its life, this is the perfect time to go out and look for some of these games. So without further ado, let's talk about it. Okay, so we're just going to dive straight into this, and the first game on the list is brought to us by Peak, and it is a interesting blend of tower defense and action RPG. I am talking about Hell Warders. This game, I believe it came out on the Switch first, so that might explain a lot of what I'm about to talk about in a second. But in this game, it takes place in a medieval land. You play as one of half a dozen or so heroes. Basically, you guys survive a demon apocalypse that's overthrown the king and taken over the castle and has poisoned the land with demon hordes who basically run out and kill humans en masse. You are granted this power, though, and as one of the Hell Warders, a ancient legion of warriors, it is your job to exorcise all of the demons and reclaim the kingdom. And so that's the setup for this like I said, action RPG, half tower defense game. So the interesting thing about this game, the whole game takes place in the castle. You'll start out in the outer courtyard and work your way in through the rooms of the castle, and those make up the different stages. And I assume that it's going to end with some huge showdown in the throne room. Gameplay wise, you'll start out I like the action RPG aspect of it because it allows you to just kind of rack up combos depending on your hero. You've got a bunch of different fighting styles that you can employ. You also got a bunch of different super moves that you can gain when your bar fills up, things like that. But in addition to that, you get access to a bunch of different kind of player units, and you will set those up. You can either set them up before the horde arrives. They'll give you like 2 to 3 minutes or so to get all of your ducks in a row, or as you play through the game, and the better you do, you'll get access to stronger units that you can then place during the fight. And so that's pretty cool, and I like that, the blend of it, because in a lot of tower defense games, it's cool to set up your different units, your artillery and things like that, and then just kind of watch them go. But in this game, you get an active participation in the defense effort, as you yourself are also running around slaying hordes of enemies as the game goes on. And so I thought that was really cool. Graphics wise, the game does not look great. This actually looks like an early PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 game. You've got a lot of low-res textures. And the low-res textures, the graphics, like a lot of like pop-in and things like that, and it's just a muddy, like mushy, ugly game. The colors aren't very good either, which all of that is a shame because I do like the art style. The art style is definitely taken straight from like D&D or Diablo or Baldur's Gate or something like that, and so with the art style and the perspective, you definitely get more of like a dungeon crawl feel. So I would say it's more of like the dungeon crawl style action RPG, and having that mixed with the tower defense game. Ultimately, it's still a unique blend, though, so if you can get past some of the technical issues, this is a pretty good game to own, and at its going rate of like $10, you might as well go ahead and pick it up if you like either or both genres. Okay, moving up to the next game on the list, we've got a bit of a unique fighting game, and this is brought to us by Square Enix and Koei Tecmo, and this is Dissidia Final Fantasy NT. This was a fantastic game when it came out. This, of course, is the latest game in the Final Fantasy Dissidia series that we got on the PSP, and if you don't know anything about those games, it's basically just like a huge fan service title where you get heroes and enemies from your favorite Final Fantasy games, and you can have them duke it out. So you can have those, fantasy matches like Cloud versus Squall and things like that. So this newest game in the series, it doesn't bring much in the era of story, at least so far from what I played. But I mean, huge upgrades in the graphics and the gameplay. First of all, graphics wise, this is a gorgeous game. This is a top tier PlayStation 4 experience, and like I said, it's Square Enix and Koei Tecmo, so usually that's to be expected as far as production value and things like that. And no expense was spared in this game either. The frame rates are nice and smooth. The character models super detailed. The environments are super detailed. They take real-time damage in some spots and things like that. So it's just a gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous looking game. The gameplay itself is also built upon from the Dissidia formula that we got in the PSP. If you know anything about those games, this is kind of like your 3D fighting game, so kind of in the vein of like the Dragon Ball Tenkaichi games, or a lot of the newer Dragon Ball Z games, Jump Force, that sort of thing. And so I think the formula works super well here. You've got a standard attack button that you can use to whittle down your opponent's bravery and their defense, and then once they're wide open, you've got a set of attacks that will attack HP directly, and so that's the best way to defeat enemies quickly. And so once you get defeated a certain amount of times in a match, then the game is over. Like I said, you've got all of the signature attacks, the spells here. You've got summons as well, so summon crystals will pop up, and those will help you build energy towards your summon meter faster. And then once you unleash the summons, it's a good time. Status effects, the magics, everything is here. And I like how it's kind of a slightly different system for every person, depending on which Final Fantasy game they came from. So you'll definitely use and combine materia if you're playing as Final Fantasy VII characters to get the upper hand. Squall has some attacks via the junction system that was popular in that game, and things like that. Final Fantasy X characters, they use spheres, and like I said, all in all, it's a fantastic time. I don't know what this game is going for. Last I saw, this game was hovering around the $15-$20 mark, and it's kind of hard nowadays to find the Steelbook edition. I got this, caught GameStop slipping and bought this one for about $25 back in the day, and it's complete. It came with some cards and things like that. But all in all, the Dissidia games in general are fantastic. I love both the Dissidia games on the PSP, so this one for me is a no-brainer. If you like those kind of open level fighting games, or if you like Final Fantasy in general, that's a no-brainer buy. So if you see it, I don't actually see this much in the wild anymore, as it's an older game, so definitely pick it up if you haven't gotten it yet. Okay, moving on to the third game on the list, and this is a future, expensive game alert here. This is brought to us by Aspire and THQ Nordic, and this is Stubs the Zombie, Rebel Without a Pulse. And this, of course, is a remake of the 2006, 2004 game, somewhere in there, that came out on the OG Xbox. For you OG Xbox collectors, you know that Stubs the Zombie is one of the more expensive games in the collection. This game on the Xbox goes for about upwards of $120 or more, and you can get the PlayStation 4 version of this new for $19.99. So that's an absolute steal. In this, you play as our titular hero. He's kind of an undead salesman, I believe, is what the deal is. It takes place in a futuristic alternate 1950s. Takes place in a town called Punch Bowl, Pennsylvania, and this is billed as the city of the future, and it's just now being unveiled for the first time by the mayor, and so they want everything to go off without a hitch. All of a sudden, you pop out of your grave looking for brains, and then while you're out, you fall in love with, I believe, the mayor's mom, and so it's this whole thing. But the story is absolutely insane. It's a hilarious story, very nicely written with the comedy and everything, and just even with the gameplay. So as a zombie, you get access to a bunch of zombie-like moves. as including eating brains. And so as goofy and as funny as this game is, the brain eating part is actually quite gory. I mean, there's a couple of different animations where he'll hold them down or pick them up and just munch a huge chunk out of their brains, and then you'll watch your victim fall into the ground with their head split open and there's blood all over the place. And a few minutes after that, about 10 seconds or so after that, then your latest victim becomes another member of your undead army. And so once you got an army of these followers around, you can have them follow you by whistling at them. They will help you attack enemies as well, which is nice when you start to get a lot of enemies who wield firearms like police officers. So it's nice to have a nice huge army of zombies to take some of that aggro for you while you sneak around and then eat their brains from behind. This game, the graphics definitely got a boost. You'll see a little bit in the animations. You can tell that this is definitely based on an older game, and so some of the animations are not up to scratch, but like I said, I like what they did with the graphics here, and they preserved the spirit of the cartoonish like art style that the original had. Again, if you can find this game, this is a no-brainer. This is a $20 game, and it's a remaster of one of the most expensive games on the OG Xbox. So if you see Stubs the Zombie, go ahead and grab it. Okay, penultimate game now, and I want to introduce you guys to one of my favorite new RPGs. I know, it's crazy, right? It's not Final Fantasy, it's not anything like that. This is Grand Kingdom, courtesy of NIS America, and I know that sounds a little bit generic, but hear me out. This game is absolutely fantastic. So storyline-wise, it starts off simple enough. You start off as a mercenary company, kind of like the Band of the Hawk from the Berserk series. This is a kind of like feudal medieval world, and so a country that's warring between four major kingdoms. Again, you start off as a company of mercenaries who defeat the enemies, and then the people you're working for, they surrender, so you end up losing and not getting paid. But one of the enemies that you spare, they say, hey man, you guys are pretty tough, like would you like to join us and join our guild of mercenaries? And so that's how the game starts out. You're a new group of mercenaries within this larger mercenary company, trying to earn prestige and build yourself up. In this game, you'll have a bunch of different unit types that you can choose from and add to your party of 4. And so in that sense, it's a lot like Final Fantasy Tactics. So you can hire up to 50 characters from several different classes. You start off with like 8, I think, but more classes become available as the game goes on and as you level up the members in your current class, very similar to what we saw in like Final Fantasy Tactics. So it definitely has that Final Fantasy Tactics vibe in the kind of job system that they introduce here. Combat wise, you've got a turn-based fighting system, but they add a lot of real-time action in it, very similar to games like Time and Eternity, if you played that, or Legend of Dragoon, Legend of Legaia, things like that, depending on who you play as. So if you play as a Lancer or a Knight or any other close combatant like that, once you get close enough to the enemy, you can keep tapping the button to pull off different combo attacks, and the more you get it right, the more damage you can do. And even when you're using ranged attackers like witches and other magic users, if they hit them with like a firebolt or a thunderbolt or a fireball, depending on how they land, you can actually chain those attacks together, so you can get off several hits in a single attack. And they add other assist features, like if your attack puts an enemy toward the brink, then you can have an archer assist and finish them off and things like that. So the combat system is actually very active. The art style, I really like the art style in this game. The graphics are decent. It's pretty much something you would see on like the PSP, and in fact I think this is a port of a PSP game, so you won't see anything like super spectacular in the graphics when it comes to that, but I really like the art style and the way things are drawn out, and the animation looks fantastic. when your enemies are moving, and either with the story cutscenes or moving in combat itself. All in all, again, this is a game that I'm definitely going to finish. I've been playing Grand Kingdom nonstop for the last couple of days. So if you see this one, I picked this game up for $9.99 at GameStop recently, and I definitely think it's worth that. So if you're an RPG fan, this one is made by NIS America, and this one has definitely slipped through the cracks. So I would suggest definitely picking this up, as it might become rare in the future. All right, and moving on to the final game on the list today. This is brought to us by an indie developer from Malaysia called Metronome, and it was published by Sold Out Ltd, whatever it's called. This here is No Straight Roads, and I got to give a shout out to Ken's Games Collection for putting me onto this game. He had showcased this some months back, and I thought it was super interesting, and I had been looking for it ever since. The premise of this game is absolutely fantastic. So you play as either Mayday or Zook. They are a punk rock duo who is out to save the world of Vinyl City from an EDM empire using the power of rock and roll music, which is absolutely awesome. That reminds me of something you would see out of like a Tenacious D movie or something like that. But in this, like I said, you play as either Mayday or Zook. The combat in this is the star of the show, and the combat itself is pretty simple. You've got a couple of standard, kind of beat 'em up or hack and slash style combos or attacks. They increase in number, and you can get different ones as the game goes on, as well as some other special moves, some ranged attacks and things like that. But the combat, you really have to pay attention because the enemies will attack you to the beat. So whatever song is playing while you're playing the game, you really have to pay attention, because enemies will attack you on the upbeat or the downbeat, and then based on that, you'll have to dodge and then counter them. And so it makes for a great time. And in that, it kind of reminds me of like rhythm games like Rez or Child of Eden, things like that. So but like I said, going on to the graphics, the art style in this is actually really cool. I really enjoy what they did with the cell shading cartoon style graphics. The animations are fantastic, and it watches, it plays just like you're watching like a cartoon. The only major issue I have in this game is with the perspective. A lot of this game, it's funny because being No Straight Roads is the name of the video game. The gameplay is exactly that. The gameplay is extremely linear, and I found myself wanting to really get to explore Vinyl City in a fashion you would do with an open world action RPG or something like that. And the level design almost looks like you can do that, but it really teases you. Actually, you'll find yourself moving on a 2D plane a lot of the times, or you'll be moving just forward or backward into the frame, or moving left and right, like I said, 2D style. So there isn't very much, 8-directional free roaming movement in this game. That combined with and I believe it has a fixed camera in most instances as well. And so I felt like the game was very restrictive in that sense. But again, you got to cut it some slack because this is an indie developer, and Sold Out Games as the publisher, I've never heard of either of those companies. So, that being said, I just didn't think that they had the budget behind it. But if this game ever got a sequel, and they got backing by a company with more money, then this could be really something. All in all, I still think that this is a pretty fun game. Despite that all, I picked my copy up for just under $30. And again, this is one of those games that definitely fell under the radar. It's just niche enough to gain a cult following as the years goes on. And so I think that this one will be an expensive game in the future as well. Again, for the $30 that I paid for it, it's definitely worth it. You got a solid action adventure game here with a really cool premise and aesthetic. So if you see No Straight Roads, this one comes highly recommended. Definitely pick it up. Alright guys, I think that's all for this video, but let's talk about it in the comment section below. Questions, comments, concerns, threats. What are some other hidden gems on the PlayStation 4? Again, like I was talking about Radical Reggie at the beginning of the episode, this is definitely the second coming of the PS2. There's so many games, so much variety, so much to be found on the PlayStation 4, and with us coming into the final years of its life, a lot of these games are slipping through the cracks, so definitely you want to start thinking thinking about collecting for the system if you haven't done so already. If you guys like this content, go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. You'll be glad you did. I do believe that's all I got for you. Lightsaber Samurai out. Peace.